In order for abundant generosity to be given, it also has to be generously received, which I did not. And one of my neighbors, very generous spirit, decided to do something kind for me. I had mentioned that I was really, because I was so sick, having a hard time with my refrigerator. I was having a hard time cleaning it out. It was just something that I could not do. And so my friend Lucy got this really great idea to do something very kind for me. And she orchestrated a lunch for me with another neighbor to get me out of my house. And she and her little elves snuck in to my house with the aid of my children to keep a door unlocked so they didn't have to break in. That would have been a different problem. And they cleaned my refrigerator and organized everything and threw out all the things that I was just having such a difficult time with, being as sick as I was. And friends, I came home from that lunch and I opened my refrigerator and I stood there. I still remember the shame and the mortification I felt that somebody had seen my refrigerator and had cleaned it out, and I was not a gracious receiver. And that has been a catalyst for me to remember, when I am the recipient of an incredible gracious kindness, to be a gracious receiver.
Welcome to the Kindness Factor podcast, sharing life-changing personal stories of the transformational impact of deep kindness. Hosted by
Dr. Elia, the happiness doctor,
and Randy McNeely, the kindness giver. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to another episode of the Kindness Factor podcast. I'm Randy McNeely, your co-host, known as the kindness giver, joined by my other co-host, Dr. Elia Gourgouris, the happiness doctor. We are so excited to have an amazing lady, Cheryl Knowlton, joining us in the house today. She's an award-winning international motivational keynote speaker. She's a certified author, coach, and podcast host. As the CEO and Chief Energy Officer of Dynamite Productions, she's an international speaking and coaching firm. Cheryl's mission is to empower speakers and leaders to discover and monetize their magic. I like that. Discover and monetize their magic. She's totally obsessed, get this, and she'll say this herself, she's obsessed with helping speakers unmute their authentic voice, amplify their authenticity, and elevate their expression, and get paid well for doing it. Cheryl's committed to helping speakers and leaders step off the relentless, what she calls the relentless hamster wheel. Yes, I can say that word, relentless hamster wheel of stress, to embrace a life filled with purpose and impact, to go from burnout to bliss. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Welcome to the show, Cheryl. We're happy to have you here. So, has there been an experience in your life that was so impactful and transformative, where you are on the receiving end of somebody else's grace or kindness that really changed kind of the course of your life, that you'd like to share with our audience?
Absolutely. And ultimately there's two, and from a different point of view. One is more recent, and also this individual has been a guest on your show. And then there was an incident many years ago which transformed the way I look at small acts of kindness, and not in the way you might think, potentially. More recently, Jason Hewlett, who was on your June 5th show, episode 13, he talked about Chris Paulus, who had been so instrumental in his life as a mentor, as a guide, as a friend, and how he now mentors and helps others. And I have been the recipient of his generosity. For the last year, Jason and I have partnered together to create a retreat model for speakers to help them maximize and monetize their magic. And it has been nothing short of magical, as I have witnessed his abundant generosity. We met through the National Speakers Association, through the Mountain West chapter. And abundant generosity is one of our values for the National Speakers Association. And Jason embodies that almost better than anybody I've ever seen. And it's just so inspiring and beautiful to watch the way that he has mentored me and so many of our attendees, and it's just a beautiful, wonderful thing to witness. So if you haven't already listened, friends, to episode 13, June 5th, it's absolutely incredible, and Jason's fun and funny. And now from witnessing him at a deeper level, especially this last year, certainly it's ignited a fire in me to be as abundantly generous with others as he is with others, and he has been with me.
Yeah, he's a beautiful soul. I mean, his energy, just like it's his smile, his music, his performance, but his heart is so big. And so you said it several times, his generosity of
Yeah.
spirit. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that truly defines who he is. So yeah, he was a great guest, and I'm so glad you guys are collaborating so beautifully together.
Thank you. It's been an incredible year, and I've loved every second of it. But when I think about kindness, I've spent some significant time thinking about this and going back, and it's kind of a backwards thing in terms of the way that I now view kindness. And I'll frame it by saying, in order for abundant generosity to be given, it also has to be generously received, which I did not. I was pregnant with my third child, who is now 28 years old. How did she pass me in age? I have no idea how that happened. And I was so sick. I was so unbelievably sick. I actually tore a hole in my esophagus because I was so sick, and it was, had some significant medical care. And one of my neighbors, very generous spirit, decided to do something kind for me. I had mentioned, or maybe my oldest daughter mentioned, my oldest daughter was best friends with her son, mentioned that I was really, because I was so sick, having a hard time with my refrigerator. I was having a hard time cleaning it out. It was just something that I could not do. And so my friend Lucy got this really great idea to do something very kind for me. And she orchestrated a lunch for me with another neighbor to get me out of my house. And she and her little elves snuck in to my house with the aid of my children to keep a door unlocked so they didn't have to break in. That would have been a different problem. And they cleaned my refrigerator and organized everything and threw out all the things that I was just having such a difficult time with, being as sick as I was. And friends, I came home from that lunch and I opened my refrigerator and I stood there. I still remember the shame and the mortification I felt that somebody had seen my refrigerator and had cleaned it out, and I was not a gracious receiver. And that has been a catalyst for me to remember, when I am the recipient of an incredible gracious kindness, to be a gracious receiver, and to receive gifts in the spirit in which they were intended, and to not let my own shame and embarrassment get in the way of a gracious gift. And that's really affected. I mean, that was so many years ago, and that's affected the rest of my life so significantly.
That is so interesting, because we had another guest, Christina Bonava, tell us about how she was working in a resort, and she lives in Dubai, and she was working, and her grandfather passed away, and she wanted to go to the funeral, but her boss said, well, if you go to the funeral, you won't have a job when you get back. And one of the most the unkind things he could say. But she said, that experience with his unkindness drove me to want to be kind to everybody else. It's interesting, you shared your experience with you not being the gracious receiver of kindness. You recognize, though, that here's the thing: you weren't the gracious receiver at that time, but you've been graciously receiving it forever since then. And now, because of that, you're inspiring others to be great, to remember to be gracious receivers. And we all have, I think we've all had those experiences, and that was beautiful.
Thank you. And I was thinking about this podcast yesterday significantly when I was interestingly caught on the freeway in the worst hailstorm I've ever experienced in my life. It was so scary. and it was beautiful to witness the other drivers around me. We made a collective decision to just stop, to not push each other and to going and to just stop. And we all, without speaking, because we couldn't, the roar was so loud. I was terrified that my windshield was going to shatter. There was flooding on the road. The hailstones were larger than an inch in diameter. It was crazy. And just, it's those little things. The little things really mean a lot to me now. It's not somebody sneaking into my house and cleaning out my refrigerator. It's letting me in traffic. It's being gracious when we're all in a hurry. We're all trying to get where we're trying to go. Everything from the freeway to little things like paying for the person behind you in line at your favorite drive-in. My favorite drive-in these days is Chick-fil-A. Paying for somebody behind you is just so much fun, to give that kindness, and you never even get to see how that is received, but it's just that is fun, to be on the giving end of that and the receiving end.
That happened to me once at a drive-through, and I went to pay, and they're like, "Oh, the person in front of you," and I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, "Oh, they already paid for it." I'm like, "What?" Like, I've never had. So then immediately I'm like, "Well, then I'm going to pay for the guy behind me."
Yes, pay it forward.
Because I was like, I have my money, my credit card out, ready to pay for myself. Well, whatever they ordered behind me, just keep it going. And the lady, the drive-through broke into the biggest smile. It was, it's a moment of humanity, right? When two complete strangers connect and bond, and she's kind of witnessing. The person in front of me started it. I continued. I mean, I don't know what happened to the person behind me. Did they do that to somebody else? But it's kindness is infectious. I mean, that's
yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's so infectious. And this hailstorm yesterday reminded me of it was about a decade ago. We had some significant fires around where we live in Utah. Two different fires, one to the south of us and one just right behind us, that caused us to have to evacuate. And because of that fire, a few weeks after our fire, because there was no vegetation, there was a significant rainstorm that brought massive amounts of mud down and flooded people's basements with, 4 feet of mud. And the call went out on a Sunday at church. This neighborhood needs help. And I taught my kids to stop, drop, and roll, not from fire, but to stop, drop, and roll. When an opportunity to serve someone else comes, do not ignore it. Stop what you're doing if you possibly can, and drop what you're doing and go. And we spent 2 days helping complete strangers muck out their horrible mess of a basement. And the local Little Caesars Pizza donated 60 pizzas. And that was one of my jobs one day, was to run around and pass out pizza to complete strangers as they were working, so that they didn't have to stop and get something to eat, so that we could all stay fueled. And the domino effect of the generosity, people being there to help complete strangers, a local pizza place donating all of this pizza. They weren't looking for media attention. They just gave because it was the right thing to do, to help neighbors in that moment. And it was, my husband just brought that up to me yesterday, and that rainstorm really brought it home again. Like, wow, that was a beautiful moment where we had the opportunity to stop, drop, and roll.
I can't help but think, in Elia lives in Superior, Colorado. And has it been 2 years now since the fire there destroyed?
2 years, New Year's Eve, yes. 1,060 homes burned.
1,000.
The biggest natural disaster in the state of Colorado, and it happened in our backyard.
What?
And at one point, you guys were afraid that they had to leave their house. He had to evacuate, and he was afraid that his house had been burned to the ground. And his house is one of the few houses in that area that did not burn. Now for a short word from our wonderful sponsor, Kindness Worldwide. If this video resonates with you, I invite you to donate generously to their cause. We can all help them build a global culture of kindness. Thank you.
When a wallet was returned just moments after it was lost, a purpose was found. This one act of kindness inspired the formation of the nonprofit Kindness Worldwide, to create a culture of kindness in communities throughout the world. Kindness Week Worldwide mobilized the entire community in York, Pennsylvania, featuring initiatives and playbook programs including blood drives, kindness cards, K-12 and college students embracing kindness, and an innovative means of community policing, kindness citations. If something so magical can happen in York, Pennsylvania, the same and other inspirations can happen anywhere and everywhere. Our Screen Scenes initiative featuring the Kindness Factor will showcase these many stories of kindness. Let's include your community among them. Kindness is the heartbeat of the world. Together, with your support, we can make all its hearts beat as one.
But
I mean, yeah, we could see it on television. The fires were all around, and at some point our ring by the front door went down. So I turned to my wife, I said, honey, and this is our dream home. We really raised our family. This is I said, I think we lost our home, and we cried and we hugged, and we had some couple of rentals in the neighborhood. I'm like, we lost everything that we had, everything that we owned. I felt like everything was gone overnight. And it's a very strange feeling.
Yeah.
But you know what? At our age, to rebuild, to start again, and the next morning I snuck in behind the barricade, behind everything. The weird thing is that for the first time, it started to snow. The very next day, we got eight inches of snow. Had that happened the day before, this was the latest first snow in Colorado history. So the delay, we got it December 30th is when the fire happened, and December 31st is when the snow came. And fortunately, very blessed. All the homes were okay, even though a lot of our neighbors lost everything. And it's just a strange feeling to know, man, we don't have anything. Wow. And it turns out that wasn't true. It's just what we thought had happened. But the camaraderie, the friendship, the community came together, feeding so many homeless families.
I remember you telling us about the experience of people going and feeding. Didn't you go and work with people feeding people?
Yeah, we did at the community center. Yeah, because there were 1,000 homeless. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of families. It's a lot.
Yeah, I remember you saying that how amazing it was, how people just came together, how there was so much caring and kindness and so much going on there. That Cheryl talking about what she did just made me. I couldn't help but think of what you had shared with me before.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting, Randy and Cheryl, we live in a really nice neighborhood, kind of affluent community and so on. So the people that lost their homes, $1 million home, when they would they're homeless, right? But they show up with cars that are it's not the typical, when you think about somebody homeless, I mean, Mercedes, BMW, Lexuses, Teslas or whatever. And yet they literally have whatever clothes they had on and their cars, they had nothing else left. They had, so and a lot of them were not used to being on the receiving end of somebody else's kindness because they've been, financially affluent, successful. So they've never been in that position. And the amount of gratitude from those people, just water, food for their kids. I mean, because we've, in our church, and we've gone and fed the homeless multiple times in different parts of Denver, Boulder, and so on. But it was interesting to see people of certain affluence being homeless, and how, maybe humility and gratitude at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if I can share exactly what it felt like, but they were just so grateful. And it was just beautiful to have the community come together like that.
Oh, and thank you for sharing that. That is so beautiful, and a reminder, regardless of our financial status, to be gracious receivers when the moment comes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so how have those experiences, all those experiences, impacted the way that you look at life and look at people and see people, and from this perspective of, I know that you are striving with all your heart to be a gracious receiver, and you've talked about how kind Jason Hewlett is. But I have to tell you, Jason Hewlett had a lot of great things to say about this lady we know named Cheryl Knowlton, and so we would like to hear a little bit more about what have you been driven to do because of the kindness that's been given to you.
Jason and I are doing a retreat together at the end of August at another incredibly generous friend's ranch. Chad Hymas, another Hall of Fame speaker here in Utah, incredible human, one of the most brilliant humans I've ever known, and also abundantly generous. And because of Chad's generosity and Jason's generosity, I am looking for ways to pay it forward. And last night, one of our mutual friends posted something on Facebook about how incredible he knows our retreat is going to be and how life-changing it's going to be for the recipients. He didn't ask for anything, but I felt a little nudge to gift it to him. I know he's been going through a really hard time. He's had a very difficult year, personally and professionally. And so I messaged him and I said, I'd like to give it to you. I'd like to gift this to you if it works for your schedule and you'd like to attend. And he responded the same way I did with my fridge. I didn't mean to ask for anything. Like he would, a little bit of, and then he said, and if you mean that, I would love to accept that. And so knowing that his big, beautiful, generous heart is going to be with all of us in abundance, in giving, that creates an up-leveled experience for everyone.
Yeah. Why is it so hard to receive? It's so much easier to give than to receive. It's
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's call it what it is. It's pride. We all have a certain amount of pride. We don't, we want to be able to say, I can take care of myself. I can do these things. I can make things happen. And at least, okay, maybe I should just speak for myself. But for me, it's my own pride at thinking I ought to be able to do this. I ought to be able to take care of myself. I ought to be able to. So I shouldn't need to have someone feel like they need to help me or whatever, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's always pride. I think sometimes it's just too vulnerable. Just like, oh, this feels uncomfortable. It's not. So Cheryl, last year I brought 20 of my friends, mostly from Utah, actually, to Greece. We to this incredible 10-day sailing trip, like 3 catamarans, 3 captains, 3 horses, like a dream come true for them. It was on a bucket list. Like this is like something they've always wanted to do. An amazing experience for all of us. Well, my wife and I are like 20 of our best friends. And every day, each one of them would express gratitude. Thank you so much. And I got overwhelmed. Like it was so much love and so much gratitude that I literally couldn't handle it. So I would say like, well, we created this, all 22 of it, like we. And finally, after the second day of doing that, one lady that was part of the group, she goes, can I talk to you for a minute? I'm like, sure. She pulls me aside, listen, we all love you. We're all very grateful for what you've done. Tomorrow, when we do this again, because you're going to hear this every single day until the sailing trip is over, just bow your head and say, I received that. And don't say another word. And I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, Elia, you need to learn how to receive. I'm like, and I thought I was good at receiving, but she called me out on it. So then, of course, the next morning comes in, we're all having breakfast and all that stuff, and they go around the table too, like, thank you so much. This is the blah blah blah. So then I looked at her, she looks at me, and she's looking at me like this, and I said, I had to bite my tongue because it was so natural for me to say, well, we're all doing this together, because I mean it. I think we all manifested this together. It's not a lie, but she was looking at me with such piercing eyes. So I just bowed my head and I'm like, okay, I received that. Thank you. And she comes up to me, we're diving. She passed me on the back. I'm so proud of you for doing that.
That's awesome.
And in the last 12 months, to say I receive it, I'm doing so much better. It's still not easy, but I'm getting better at saying I received that. Thank you.
Yes. And something for all of us to see where that shows up. My transformational mindset coach lives in Denver. And, we have been working together now for 4 years. And the last time we were together, he's a great hugger, and he was giving me a hug, and I was trying to give him a hug back. And he said, knock it off, just receive it. Just receive it. And so, just learning, even in the small ways that, the little things are the big things, even when we're giving a hug, just to receive that envelopment and someone's love and gratitude is a beautiful thing.
It's so amazing that you just said that the little things are the big things, because I was thinking that earlier when you were talking about all these little things that happen. And I was just talking to someone earlier this morning about the little things. And I said to him, you realize that because he had intimated, well, it's just a small thing. I really don't need to stress about that. I said to him, you realize that when it comes to trust and other things like that, or kindness, whatever, the little things are the big things. The little things are the things that end up making the difference. It's through small and simple things, great things are brought to pass.
Yes, I believe that. I absolutely believe that. There's another friend of mutual friend of my and Jason's, Christoph Merrill. And when he and I met, he was referred to me through Jason. He was someone who had had tremendous experience speaking from stage, but had gotten away from that. I wanted to come back to that. And the very first time we talked, we had a scheduled conversation, and I had just gotten some very, very bad news about a family member that we thought was not going to make it much longer. And within the first 3 minutes of our very first conversation, we established that we had both been adopted at birth, which gave us an instant like Velcro connection. And I was in such a distraught state that a perfect stranger to me at this point, he said, "Let me buy you an airline ticket so that I could go home and be with this family and be with this family member." And I was blown away by his generosity. And now we're dear friends, but I've never forgotten that, because that's a great place to start a friendship.
He stepped into the role of a kindness hero immediately there.
He stepped into the role of being a kindness hero. I'm so blessed to have so many around me. And but Jason's a kindness hero as far as I'm concerned. And Christoph is also a kindness hero, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Cheryl, amazingly, our time has gone by so fast. Once again, we could talk for hours. So at the end of our show, we always ask our wonderful guests 1, 2, or perhaps even 3 pearls of wisdom for our audience from your vast experience in the sphere of kindness. What would you say to our audience? 1, 2, 3.
As much as you love giving, also learn to love receiving.
Yes.
There's one.
Absolutely. Yes. Great reminder.
What's the next one?
Absolutely.
Look for the little ways to bring joy to someone's life, whether it's a smile, whether it's paying for somebody behind you, whether it's bringing them a toothbrush and a gallon of water after they have just lost their home, whether it's a hug. There are so many, the little things really are the big things. And looking for and being a curious investigator of how we can bring joy into other people's lives on a daily basis will fuel us in ways that we could not even begin to imagine. And we all have issues. We all have problems. We all have challenges. I have found that my challenges and my problems become very small when I make my mission in life to bring joy to others.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cheryl. How can our audience, if they want to connect with Cheryl Knowlton, what's the best way to do that?
You can go to my website, CherylKnowlton.com, KNOWLTON.com. And I learned from Jason. I learned from the best. My cell phone number, my actual cell phone number, is on every single page in the top right corner. You can also connect with me through any social media channel, with the exception of TikTok. So I have 14 grandchildren, so I'm not allowed to be on TikTok.
What? Well, congratulations.
You're only 25, awesome. Aren't you?
Right? Oh, I love that. Thank you for that. Yes, that math totally works for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl, for your time today. It's been a very enjoyable conversation. We want to say thank you to our audience for joining us, and just invite you, take the time today, think about, what did I learn? How's it applicable to me? What am I going to do about it? How am I going to go out and pay it forward, if you will? And until next time, remember that with kindness,
everybody wins.
Everybody wins.